A while ago, I made a video about this game right here, as in a 2004 game on Monday Night Football between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Denver Broncos. This game, which was Cincinnati's first game on Monday Night Football in more than a decade after being near the bottom of the NFL for so long, was notable for a few reasons, not the least of which being the fact that the Bengals pulled off the upset and won in front of their home fans by a final score of 23-10. However, the reason why this game was notable, and remains notable more than 2 decades later, was because of a cheating controversy that occurred where the Bengals listed wide receiver and former first-round pick Peter Warrick as out, and yet he played. I don't think I have to explain the fact that you can't do that. You can't just circumvent the injury report in that manner. Needless to say, hell was raised over that incident. You can learn more about what went down by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Having said that, faking an injury report and deceiving one team into thinking that someone isn't playing, when, in actuality, they are playing, is a form of cheating in more ways than one. And there are many reasons why this practice is illegal, especially nowadays with how intertwined the NFL is with sportsbooks. But what you might not know is that this was not the first cheating controversy to take place during a game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Denver Broncos. And this was not the first time that the Broncos accused the Bengals of cheating. If I had a nickel for every time the Denver Broncos played the Cincinnati Bengals on the road in Cincinnati and accused the Bengals of cheating during the contest, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Because 35 years prior to this game right here on Monday Night Football, and more than half a century ago, in 1969, when the Cincinnati Bengals and the Denver Broncos were members of the rival, soon-to-be merging American Football League, they had a heated game against each other where, for as intense as it was on the field, it was even more intense off of it after some accusations were made by the Broncos against the Bengals. As for whether the accusations were warranted, well, that's a whole different issue. And it deserves a deep dive today. Because this is the story behind one of the craziest cheating controversies in the history of professional football, and during the 1969 season. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you like learning more about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, and in this case, the AFL, as we post videos every single day on here about obscure stories that you might not know about. So thanks in advance for your support as we try and grow this community even more. And with that in mind, let's talk about the time that the Broncos accused the Bengals of being cheaty cats. Before I talk about the actual game in question, as in this game right here, and what exactly went down with regards to the cheating, we need some context to understand the importance of the game. It's October 19th, 1969. It's week 6 of the AFL season, and we've got a big game on our hands in Cincinnati between the Denver Broncos and the Cincinnati Bengals, 2 teams in the West Division. Both of these teams need to win this game to keep pace in the AFL West hunt. In 1969, for the first and the only time ever, the top 2 teams in each division would make it to the playoffs, as the postseason expanded from 2 teams to 4. Right now, the Bengals, in just their second season, find themselves at 3-2, only 1 game behind the Kansas City Chiefs for that wildcard spot. And the Broncos, normally one of the laughingstocks of the AFL, and a team that has never finished above 500, find themselves at 2-3, 2 games back after losing 3 straight games. By no means are either of these teams out of the hunt, but to say that a win would go a long way for both of these clubs would be putting it lightly. If the Broncos win, they get back to 500, stop their 3-game losing skid, and could potentially get to within a game of the playoffs. If the Bengals win, then not only do they stop their 2-game skid following a 3-0 start, but they could potentially find themselves tied with the Chiefs for the wild card, with a game against the Chiefs coming up the following week. So to say that this was a big game near the midway point of the season would be putting it lightly. And as you're able to tell from these highlights, when all was said and done, in an absolute thriller, the Broncos prevailed, taking it by a final score of 30-23. This game truly was a tale of 2 halves, as the Broncos led it 16-0 early in the second quarter and led it 30-6 at the halftime break, before the Bengals mounted a comeback charge of their own by shutting the Broncos out in the second half and scoring the final 17 points of the game. However, even though the game was a scare for the Broncos, a win is a win, and Denver was able to snap their skid and get back to 500 thanks to a few factors. Number one, their defensive line was nothing short of dominant. Whereas Steve Tensey never got sacked once for the Broncos, on the flip side, the Bronco defenders were able to sack Bengals starting quarterback Sam Weish an astonishingly high 10 times. Anytime you're plus 10 in the sack column, you're usually going to win the game. It was an extremely physical game at the line of scrimmage that the Broncos ended up dominating in. Floyd Little, the future Hall of Fame running back, was superb as always, as he finished the game running for 166 yards and a touchdown on 5.7 yards per carry. Little had a lot of great games in his career, as he's a Hall of Famer for a reason, and would become an AP first-team All-Pro during that 1969 campaign. However, the 166 yards he picked up in this game against the Bengals was at the time, and remains to this day, a career high for the former Syracuse back. Combine that with a Bronco defense that forced 3 turnovers and an offense that outgained the Bengals 421 to 256 in total yardage, outgaining them by roughly 170 yards, and that's a pretty good recipe for success, even if the Bengals did put up a scare in the second half, and the wheels sorta came off the bus. So after winning this game and going on the road to defeat the Bengals and stay alive in the playoff picture, you would think that it would be all smiles in the Bronco locker room, right? They got the win, they got what they were after, and now they can regroup and get ready for their next game. However, that was not the case. Far from it, in fact. Because after beating the Bengals, the Broncos could only think of one thing, and that was the fact that the Bengals cheated. This was not a fair and square game. Cincinnati cheated by altering their equipment in order to try and hurt the Denver players. There are rules and regulations about what you can do to your cleats, as you are not allowed to shave your cleats. Under today's rules, per Rule 5, Section 4, Article 4, Item 4, where it talks about improper cleats, it says that a player is not allowed to wear short cleats, or in their words, cleats with concave sides or points which measure less than 3/8 inches in diameter at the tips, or cleats with oblong ends which measure less than 1/4 by 3/4 inches at the end tips. The reason for this is about safety. If your cleats are an improper length and the studs are too short, it can seriously hurt someone should you step on them or fall over them. It can leave a mark. It's like you're actually stepping on someone without anything to block the fall. And after the Broncos won, because of how banged up they were following the hard-fought effort, the only explanation in their mind as to why they were so banged up was because the Bengals cheated and wore cleats that were not permitted by the rules of the American Football League. As Bronco running back Floyd Little said after this game, and after this record-breaking performance, "They tore me up. They cut my pants open. Look at them. That's a cleat mark. I got my socks tore off me the first play of the game. I got my pants torn off me. You can see my elbows. Look at my legs. They got me in the back. They had to do something to their cleats." Seems like pretty strong accusations there by the Broncos against the Bengals that the cleats were modified, and Little was not the only one saying stuff like this. However, there were, shall we say, quite a few problems with these accusations. For one, the referees themselves didn't seem to think that the Bengals were cheating. The referees saw no problems with anything that the Bengals did, said Bronco equipment manager Larry Elliott, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. "We asked the refs twice about it and they checked, but they didn't do anything." So let me get this straight. You said to the referees on multiple occasions, "Hey, are the Bengals wearing improper cleats?" The referees on multiple occasions checked the cleats, and the referees on multiple occasions found no wrongdoing and decided not to punish the Bengals or make them change cleats. That kind of leads me to believe that, the Bengals were not cheating here. I know it's a crazy assumption, but seeing as they checked twice and both times the Bengals were in compliance, Unless the Bengals somehow knew when the referees were going to ask to look at the cleats, and Elliott was going to ask and they magically changed for that specific moment, I'm going to assume that the Bengals weren't actually wearing improper cleats. It's like if you accuse someone sitting right next to you of changing the thermostat. So you go up and check for yourself, and the thermostat is still the same temperature. Then you accuse them of doing it again, so you check it, and it's at the same temperature. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe you're just looking for someone to blame, and you're taking it out on the wrong person. Seeing as every time the referees had a chance to do something about it, they found that the Bengals were in complete compliance. On top of that, the Bengals were outraged about the Broncos accusing them of cheating, and they were willing to cooperate with any investigation to show that they were in the right. Said Bengals equipment manager Tom Gray, "We wear the same shoes and the same cleats that Denver wears. Our shoes are sitting out there in the locker room now. If anyone wants to look, they're welcome." There's not a word of truth in what they said. Translation: how can we possibly be cheating if we're wearing the same perfectly legal cleats that you're wearing? Just use your eyes. There's nothing wrong with these cleats. The evidence is right there. Don't go accusing us of something that we didn't do, especially when, number one, you can just look at the evidence for yourself, and number two, the referee stopped the game on multiple occasions and still found that we did nothing wrong. Of all the ways to accuse a team of cheating, this might be, considering the circumstances, the dumbest one of the bunch. This is a really stupid way to burn bridges, especially since Gray and Elliott were friends before all of this went down. But that relationship was obviously fractured after what transpired on this day in 1969. So what possible explanations were there for the cleat marks on Floyd Little and on some of the players if it wasn't cheating or improper cleats by the Bengals? Well, it was an extremely physical game, and Spinney Field, where the game was played, was notorious for being the worst playing surface in the American Football League. Before the Bengals moved into Riverfront Stadium for the 1970 season, the field that they played on was an absolute playing surface nightmare, which couldn't have helped matters out a lot. Plus, Little got the ball 29 times. That's a lot of times to carry the football, and it was, by far, the most amount of carries he had in a game in 1969. The more you carry the ball, the more wear and tear you're going to take, and the more likely you are to get some marks on you because of the contact you are absorbing. Bottom line, there are other explanations out there for how beaten up the Broncos were besides, oh, the Bengals were cheating by using improper cleats, when that could not be further from the truth, knowing everything that we know. There have been plenty of controversies throughout the history of professional football about teams cheating and doing illegal activities. Some of them are extremely warranted. This one from 1969, in the game that you've been watching this whole time between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Denver Broncos? Absolutely not. Especially seeing as nothing came of it, the Bengals laid out the evidence to everyone, and even the referees thought that the Broncos were cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs with their insistence on stopping the game multiple times because of these accusations. Because even though the Denver Broncos would take a win on the scoreboard and get a win in the standings, they took a really bad loss when it came to this absolutely absurd claim and with any credibility they had whatsoever. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.